Hello and welcome to this lesson on the theory of evolution 1.4 macroevolution. This is um, our last in this series of presentations on the theory of evolution. My name is Lauren Davis. I'm one of the instructors in this class. So when we talk about macroevolution, as we did in the previous lesson, we talk about things that happen over long periods of time. The species change because of something going on pretty much the geologic time scale. So over long periods of time, you see genetic changes within a species, a population even forming new species. So the origin of the species is explaining how these are formed. This is just a slide showing that all of the dog species here that we have now on our planet come from a common ancestor. And so the origin of the species talks about how closely related species are to the most common ancestor that they have. And in this case, all of these dogs have the common ancestor of a wolf somewhere back in their lineage. Now, it's kind of hard to imagine that an English pug or a Chihuahua are related to a gray wolf. They just have nothing in common as far as their size or their looks, but they do have all of the characteristics that dogs have, and dogs do come from wolf's ancestry. And so over long periods of time, you can have many changes in the population, even forming new species. So there's one type of speciation called allopatric speciation, and simply this means that something divides a population. So in this case, you see a slide of a canyon, and a canyon might erode over time, separating two types of chipmunk populations or ground squirrel populations, and as they're separated, they no longer can share genetic material from one part of the population to the other. And so over long periods of time, the genetic changes and mutations that happen in one population stay with that population, and it will have characteristics that will better adapted to the population on one side of the canyon, and the ecosystem on one side of the canyon, and the others will look slightly different on the other side over long periods of time. They even could become two different species if they remain separated and there's no crossbreeding or migration in and out of the two species. And so many times something happens with the geography of the area, and it separates the species apart from one another. Sympatric speciation simply means it's a type of speciation or new species formed within a population. So in this case, you have some fish, perhaps, that are all one population of fish in a lake or a sea. Okay, they can still breed with one another across the population, but they choose to stay in one area. So in this case, the fish to the right of the picture here just end up breeding with one another on that side of the lake. And so over time, they just stay in their side of the lake, and the other population stays on theirs, and then over time, the changes in the population can occur. This sometimes happens because of food sources. Maybe there's a food source that this population of fish like better on the right side of the lake than the fish on the left, like another type of food source over there, and over time they will adapt to that food source, and changes will occur that will help them more readily get that food source. And so this can happen even if there is some crossbreeding between the population, but mostly the population stays to itself in this localized area. So that's a type of speciation that can occur. So sometimes coevolution happens. Now, this is a really interesting type of evolution where one particular organism evolves with another organism, and actually they have this interaction that takes place. So what you see here is coevolution with a plant and a wasp species, the fly orchid. So you see on the left-hand side of this picture is the picture of the orchid, and on the other side is a picture of the fly or the wasp. And so what happens is the wasp will come and try, the male wasp will come and try to mate with what he thinks is a female wasp. The plant actually emits an odor and a secretion that smells like the female wasp pheromones. And so the wasp will come and breed with the flower thinking that it's a wasp, and in doing so, it helps the flower pollinate itself. And so these two things co-evolved together, and the orchid now is dependent upon this wasp species in order to have it pollinate. And so these two things co-evolve together in this relationship between the two. So these are just several ways in which evolution can occur within a species of organisms. So that concludes this series of lessons on the theory of evolution.